Hey everybody, this is TJR.
And this is Robert Kinsler.
And today we are going to give our reaction to the 5.1 remix of Abbey Road that's available on the Blu-ray from the 50th anniversary box set edition, Super Deluxe edition.
Right.
Of course, I reviewed the stereo version on the channel. Do we want to give first overall impressions or wait till the end?
Let's wait till the end
Okay.
and let's go through track by track, starting with Come Together. What do you think?
Come Together, yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Do you want to start?
We'll do brief, but then if it lends itself, we can talk about more.
Sure.
What jumped out to me on that song, ironically, it's recognized as one of John Lennon's great songs, but the drums on this mix just jump out at you. You just hear, just how musical Ringo's drumming is, and obviously the mix on it's incredible. But that. It was almost like I remember hearing his drums, but boy, it's like, wow, the drums are just there. And obviously you hear how great John's vocals are and stuff, but just the mix just jumps out at you. It's like, wow, and we might say that about the whole thing, but in many ways it's like hearing that song for the first time, especially in terms of his drumming.
When I reviewed this track when it was an advanced track, I felt that this was one area where they kept pretty close to the original. They didn't do anything too outrageous with the stereo remix. They kept it pretty close to home. And I discussed my reasons why. I won't get into that here, why I felt they did it that way. What I noticed this time the most was there were tiny little, just really tiny guitar voicings that I honestly have to say I didn't notice them before. Even in the stereo remix, I really didn't notice them. But just little tiny guitar voicings came out. Just very subtle things. And this goes to a criticism that I've had, not a criticism, but an observation regarding the remixes in the past, was that a lot of times when you record a song, there are textures you put in the recording that are more felt than heard. And I wondered at times with these stereo remixes bringing out so much more detail that those things should have been left the way they were supposed to be left, which is felt more than heard. But I see now with this remix, especially listening to this song, and I'm going to probably bring this up more as we talk about other songs, that there actually were still a lot of things more felt than heard, and this this 5.1 remix brings out those things that were more felt than heard, I guess I should say.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so... but yeah, that's what I would say about it.
One thing, and as we go through it, one thing I might say is that you hear so many more things than maybe you've heard before, but so in a way you'd say, oh, maybe it's too cluttered, too busy. It's not, because of the separation, because of the care that went into it. It like with Come Together, it definitely is not. Nothing's going to jar you. Like, wait a minute, they've ruined their mix or anything like that. But you hear things, like you said, and you probably ultimately feel things that you hadn't before, and it's revelatory. It's just amazing.
Oh yeah. Mostly I will agree with you on that. There is one particular song where I actually will disagree with you on that, where I think it did get cluttered, but we'll wait till we get to that track.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Look forward to hearing that. Okay.
So, Something.
Okay.
First of all, wow, George's vocal.
Yeah.
It just felt so in front.
Oh, yeah.
Now, how you feel about that's going to be subjective, but that's the one thing I really noticed. George's vocal way up in front. Some people may like that, some people may not. But also the strings and the organ, I just said that they felt really deep. I really felt the strings and the organ more than I had previously. Those felt much more real, like they were there in the room.
Yeah, and the other thing that I really like on that is the bass guitar on that, and it's, like I said, it doesn't necessarily, block anything out. It doesn't distort anything else. But boy, you really feel it.
It definitely is deeper.
Felt it, and also there's that one build that's so symphonic, and that just is so. It's so stirring in you when you feel it, and those are the things that jumped out at me on something. What a great track, and nice to hear it like this.
Yeah. Now we have Maxwell's Silver Hammer. What I wrote down was that I noticed a lot more background textures. Once again, more background textures that maybe I hadn't noticed as much in listening to it even with the stereo remix. Also, I felt that the vocals, I wrote vocals at the end had a lot more separation. And what I meant by that was where Paul might have sung and then maybe sung again, you could actually hear those two voices. Instead of being like this, you heard them more like this, is how I would describe that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
It's just different from what you're used to. It's startling, and whether you think it's good or bad is dependent upon you.
Yeah, and I was going to say, the only thing I might add to that is just when you get toward the end of the song, where you hear all the vocals, it's so glorious. I mean, it's like, wow. I mean, it's Maxwell Silverhammer has never been among my favorite Beatles tracks, but it sound. I mean, listening to this Blu-ray, this mix, this 5.1 mix, it's like the mix is so amazing. It's like, I want to hear the song again. I mean,
really?
It's just
so it's made you like the song more now.
It's made me like the song more because you do appreciate all the virtuosity, all the shades,
all the textures,
and just at this point the Beatles are like nearing the end of their creations together, and it's just amazing how talented and how nuanced their musicianship is, and just love it here.
So now we have "Oh Darling." Now here's an interesting thing. When "Oh Darling" was another advanced track that was released on the internet prior to the re-release here, and when I first heard that remix, I did a review of it. One of the things that I pointed out, and I think a lot of people mentioned, was the background vocals in the stereo remix were brought much more out in front. You could appreciate them a lot more, whereas in the original mix, they were much more buried. For those of you who did not like that change in the stereo remix, it seems like the background vocals have been brought back more where they were in the original stereo mix, further in the background. That's how I personally felt about it.
Yeah, and I'd have to listen to that level.
Make the comparison.
Yeah, I'd have to listen to them back to back, and I'll have to do that. But that's interesting.
It sounds more like you've been listening to the Blu-ray more than the
actual
stereo.
I have. Well, when I first got this in the mail, and I think it was a day of the release or whatever, the earliest day I could get it, I immediately popped in the Blu-ray because that's the best stereo system in my home too.
Gotcha.
So I cranked it up. I listened to it a few times, and I was just overwhelmed. But it was interesting to listen to it again today together because I was listening to it a little bit more critically.
Good.
The only thing I really wrote down about "Oh Darling" is just what an amazing showcase, just how amazing Paul sounds.
Oh yeah.
And just how incredible. I mean, it's like you're in the studio, you're in Abbey Road with him, if that's where they did this track, and I'm assuming and he just sounds so incredible. What a great, because the Beatles get obviously they're groundbreaking. They were the most important band of any rock era and that kind of thing. But sometimes you forget just how individually talented all four of these guys were in different areas. And Paul was such an amazing singer.
Oh yeah.
In the blues rock idiom, and that just is cemented with this track.
This particular track was always a great showcase for Paul's vocals.
Oh yeah.
And even in the stereo remix, when it was this was also the other advanced track they released, and even when I heard the stereo remix, I said in my review, Paul's vocals are much more in front now, much more separated from the rest of the band, and it feels more like you're there in the room with him. And that, of course, carries on in this 5.1.
It does.
As well.
It does. Yeah. And part of that's the miracle or the technology of 5.1, how you can get more immersed inside the music and the recordings. So
we have Octopus Garden.
Right.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I'll do that. What I would say is just here, and maybe I've kind of said that, but just the harmonies on the song, and just the textures and the nuances of the musicianship, and and again, kind of like what we said maybe with Maxwell's Silverhammer, Octopus's Garden might not be the most beloved song in the Beatles catalog, but boy, listening to it. It just sounds amazing, and Ringo sounds great, the band sounds great, the drum. I mean, there's such a great flow when you listen to the album, on the 5.1. So, all I would say is you're going to want to listen to it.
In my stereo review, I mentioned that the opening guitar sounded beefier and meatier, felt more, had a lot more muscle in it than in the previous mix. But one thing I mentioned in that review was that the jangly guitars during the verse were much more, I could hear them much more distinctly now, but I kind of thought they were kind of overcrowding the vocals a little bit. But I noticed them more. What I noticed more in this 5.1 remix is more of the piano now.
Yeah.
The guitar is still very present, but now I notice the piano much more than I did. Even with the stereo remix, I noticed the piano much more in the 5.1.
Yeah.
And Octopus Garden was, not that I dislike the song, it's not one of my favorite Beatles songs, but both the stereo remix and this 5.1 are really bringing out an appreciation for all the textures.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All the nuanced layers of textures that were put into that.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. Now, when you get past that, now I Want You, She's So Heavy.
Yeah.
Counterpart. This is to me one of the a great Beatles track. I mean, I just love this song, and what I would say here is even more than what I said previously. I really felt like I was in the studio, like a fly on the wall, while they're creating it. I mean, you're so. It's incredible how much this immersive experience has brought you right there, and it's almost like it almost brings, not the song itself, the emotional, but just it almost brings tears to your eyes. Just how incredible that I go, after all these years of listening to these great songs, but especially with this one, I was right there. Cool. And that's what immediately just came to mind listening to it again today.
This is one of the darker Beatles songs, and it's the other proto-metal song of theirs. People talk about Helter Skelter. Yeah. I think this is a part of that too, where it's like, early beginnings of heavy metal music. And I felt the same way when I heard the stereo remix in my review, and that carries over in the 5.1. Yeah. The one thing that to me is different between the stereo and the 5.1 is the way the organ just shoots out at you in this one. When the organ first hits, it's just like, whoa. It almost like it snuck up on me, and just like and even though I've heard it before, it was almost like it snuck up from behind and like tapped me on the shoulder, or like real fast like that. It gave me a startle. I really liked how much more the organ was brought out, and that's my one.
And the last thing I'm going to say about it, because I referred back to my notes, there's one part early in the song where John's voice goes really low, and it's almost like it's so low that it's even beyond his range. But I mean, he totally hits a note. But before in the past, I've heard, and you go, oh yeah, his voice went low. But here, when it goes low, the inflection, all the nuances in his great voice, it's like you're tapped into that, and it's like. The first time I ever experienced that was listening to the 5.1, and it just like I said, maybe that's why I say it, almost tear-inducing for me. John's such an amazing singer, and it's like I said, it brings, even just talking about it now, it's given me chills. It's incredible.
And now, so that brings us to what would have been the end of side 1 originally.
Right.
And
exactly.
so now we go to what would have been side 2, had back in the days of vinyl, with "Here Comes the Sun."
Right.
I only wrote 2 words. I wrote "more psychedelic." And to me, what really came across in the 5.1 is, especially as we got closer and closer as the song progressed and we got closer to the end, I actually felt for the first time that "Here Comes the Sun" felt psychedelic to me, which I never thought before. It never made me feel that way before. But hearing it in 5.1, I just felt like this song, as we get closer and closer to its ending, it becomes more and more psychedelic sounding as it goes.
Yeah.
Just my thoughts.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the things I wrote is that there's an emotional... The song itself is obviously beautiful. It's like, psychedelic, Baroque, all the different Beatlesque...
tropes.
That you're aware of. But the emotion in George's voice, the singing here, is what it strikes me. Because he's obviously a great songwriter, but just just the power in his voice and stuff. I was moved by, and the muscular quality of the drums too. Because it's, you don't think of this as, like you said, as a heavy metal or hard rocking song, but just the assuredness and how his drums are so locked in musically with what's going on with the song. I mean, a lot of that's where I think Ringo is such an amazing drummer. His drumming always fits the songs. Yeah. And this is just such one of George's best ever songs that he did while he was with the Beatles. And and I think I'm probably
I want to
saying too
concur
much.
with you. Yeah, I want to concur with you because I hadn't really thought about it till you just brought it up just now, but there is a confidence to his drums during that song. We think of that as a mellow song, but there is a real confidence to it that's much more aggressive than the song itself.
That's why this song, even though it's beautiful and introspective and all that stuff, it's anything but syrupy. You know, this is not. This is not. You know, I mean, and it's because of the musical input of everybody, but Ringo, I think, really helps. You know, he's like the secret weapon in this song.
You've just given me a revelation here, because I think without Ringo, this song could have come out a lot more syrupier. And maybe with a different producer, it might have come out syrupier. But with Ringo's drums, there's this commanding confidence to it that avoids that. You're right. He's the secret weapon.
So
in this
song.
Song.
George is obviously really important because he wrote the song and his vocals are great. But Ringo adds so much.
I had never thought of that.
Yeah, before. But I just it's just a masterpiece. Just love this song.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that observation.
Yeah. Now let's go with. So let's see.
Because
exactly.
Yes, because.
And I wrote very few notes on this, so I'm going to let you start.
Then I'm embarrassed because I wrote nothing.
Really?
I think the only thing I would say about the 5.1 versus the stereo, which I already reviewed, is the stereo. I think what I said with that is that it made it even more ethereal and magical sounding than it had sounded previously when I heard the stereo remix. And all I could say is that maybe the 5.1 took it from 10 to 11, maybe just a little bit more, but because I was so impressed with, I was very impressed with the stereo, and I felt that this is another one where he didn't do anything too crazy or radical, just enhanced and elevated it up a few more notches, and made it sound more mystical than it had sounded previously. And I think the 5.1 just pushes it just a little bit more.
Right, exactly.
Too high.
Well said. And the only thing I wrote down here is just incredible vocals. It's just like, wow. It just hits you like a beautiful, wave from the sea or something. It's like, well, just love it, And so now
you never give me your money.
Never give me your money, exactly.
Yeah. I wrote, of course, Paul's vocals much more in front to me in the 5.1 than in the stereo. Much more in front.
I had that note too as well.
His vocal. Once again,
and you hear it so clearly too, though.
Yes.
And it's like it's just so pristine, And the one note I wrote on this is like nothing in this mix is out of place. I can't imagine that no matter your expertise, no matter if you're the greatest audiophile. I mean, everything in this mix is perfect. I mean, it's just amazing,
What I noticed as the song faded out more than I've ever noticed before is the lead guitar soloing at the end where it fades out. I think that was always more buried, and even in the stereo remix, I felt like it didn't quite come out as much as it did in the 5.1, and that's about the only other thing I would say.
Okay, yeah, on Sun King, my one note I said is that, and I never noticed it before listening, the bass is almost used as a lead instrument. It's just as prominently and artistically and creatively used as the guitars are used. And I'd heard it before, but boy, because of the the greater spectrum of sound, or just the more immersive kind of experience with the 5.1, I just was in love with the bass on there and how it in the arrangement, it just fits so beautifully in there. And I think that's one of the great advantages of with this kind of increased soundscape that you get,
One thing that, what I would say about with Sun King, I know something with Sun King, is throughout this whole remix, I didn't really hear anything where like something really radically different from the stereo, where like say you have something starting to pan one way and then it pans all the way around to the other side, where like, okay, that was never done in the original, just something really off the wall like that. There isn't any, except for Sun King, there isn't any of that I heard listening to this 5.1, except on Sun King, where there was a separation in the guitars where you hear one guitar line come from one end, and then you hear the callback to that coming out of another end. I thought that was very cool. That was, I don't believe it was that way in the stereo remix. I didn't hear it that way, but I heard it this way in the 5.1. But I heard that too, now that you mentioned it.
And that's what I'm saying. I like how the two guitars and the bass, I just like that. And then obviously in that song, it has those amazing, almost like Beach Boys type harmonies. And just so, I mean, again, it's a great track. Just fantastic, and it sounds incredible here.
One thing though that 5.1 brought out that maybe fans may not want to hear brought out, or maybe even the Beatles themselves may not want brought out, is the transition between going from Sun King into Mr. Mean, Mr. Mustard. You hear where certain instruments stops and others start, and it's just a little bit clunkier than it was previously, and that became more apparent listening to the 5.1. Now,
it doesn't bother me though. I'm
obviously, the Beatles and their estates have to approve of it. The surviving Beatles and their estates have to approve of it. For it to be put out there.
Yeah.
But apparently they were fine with it.
Yeah. I'm good with it.
Some listeners might say, "Ooh, I don't like that. That sounds a little clunkier now." Others might say it just makes it feel that much more grounded and real.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about this album.
Depending on how you feel about it.
It's a very ambitious album, but it sounds real. It doesn't sound like a bunch of studio trickery or anything. I mean, it sounds very authentic, very much of the Beatles and their distinctive talents, and I'm good with that.
It struck me odd at first, but I'm guessing I'll probably get used to it with more listens.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. This is not not my most critical thing.
Yeah.
But it's probably my first nitpick.
Yeah.
And one other thing. So Mean Mr. Mustard, of course, goes into Polythene Pam, and she came in through the bathroom window.
Right, exactly.
And I wrote a note. I just said that all three of these, I said this about the stereo too, but even more so with the 5.1, they feel more rock now. Those three songs didn't always feel that rock when I listened to the original stereo mixes. I mean, I like them.
Yeah.
I do like them, but they never felt as rock. They felt more like rock when I heard the stereo remix. And in the 5.1, I think that definitely carries through and is maybe once again brought up a few more notches.
Yeah,
they just feel more rock now.
I agree with that, yeah. What I mentioned, at least in terms of when she came in through the bathroom window, is there was vocal nuances that I don't ever recall hearing before. And I really, and again, I don't know if that's because listening to it under a microscope today, like we were, with the 5.1, but I have to just say, it's anytime I hear, and I over the years, I've told people the reason I love the Beatles is because every time I put on a Beatles, track and I'm listening to it, I hear something new or something's fresh or something reawakens in me something. But boy, the 5.1 delivers that in spades, that idea. And that for sure I heard there, And there's also one part, I think it was in Mean Mr. Mustard, where just the tambourine is glorious. And, you just don't hear enough tambourine in the world. And it's like, I'm fine with that too,
Very good.
Yeah.
I did mention Paul's vocals as well. I wrote a little note here about on this remake. The 5.1, I should say. His vocals, I wrote down, sound more sleek. It sounds. I said everything else sounds more rock, but his vocals feel more sleek. If that makes sense.
Okay.
His vocals feel more doubled on this 5.1, and maybe they were. Maybe they were doubled. But. Yeah, that's the main thing, was just those vocals, and they're much more in front.
Yeah.
Overall, really liked it a lot.
Yeah.
And so that takes us out of there.
To Golden Slumbers, right?
Into Golden Slumbers, yes. I didn't write anything on Golden Slumbers.
Yeah.
I didn't write any notes. I mean, I love that song. It's one of my favorite Beatles songs.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites on this album.
Oh, yeah, I love it, yeah. The thing that I wrote then, as I'll jump in here, is just how lovely the strings intertwine with the bass line. It's like the song is obviously beautiful, even just on its surface. Paul's vocals are great. The piano's beautiful. But just some of those little musical textures we're talking about where the 5.1 really allows you to get inside the music, I just experienced that in a profound way. And I'm sure, people can very well maybe do that with some of the previous mixes, but it really hit me listening to the 5.1 today. Just how, but again, what a great track. What a great song.
The 5.1 remix aside, this is another track that just amazingly showcases Paul's vocals.
Yeah.
Amazingly showcases.
Very much so. Yeah.
So after that, we have, of course, Carry That Weight. What I noticed most about the remix, and a lot of what I'm talking about tonight, is just how I heard the 5.1 versus how I heard the stereo.
Yeah.
Because I really closely examined the stereo before I wrote my review. So what I hear different to me, what strikes me the most in this 5.1 is the guitar solo. The guitar solo feels like like the amplifier's right there in the room.
Yeah.
So that really stuck out with me on that.
Definitely,
Otherwise, it's There's not much more I can say beyond that. Oh, that's right. On Carry That Weight, during the fade out, that little arpeggio that goes downward, I can't hum it very well. As all the other elements start to come into play as it fades out, the guitar, that guitar line, that descending arpeggio gets lost. And here's the one part where I feel like it's too cluttered because they're bringing out too many other details that were once again more in the background previously, because that guitar line, that descending arpeggio, supports the melody as it fades out. And to me, that gets more buried with all the other elements being brought out more to the forefront. And this is the part of the 5.1 where I personally feel it gets too cluttered.
And then I need to re-listen to that. Yeah. So I have
just
nothing
my
to add to that. No, but good observation. Good observation.
This brings us to the end. And although it's not.
It's not the end.
It's not the end, but it is called the end.
And it is close to the end.
And go ahead.
What I was going to say here, and again, I keep lavishing praise on Ringo Starr, and I'm a huge fan of Ringo. But yeah, I just, the 5.1, listening to that drum solo is it's always sounded great, but boy, it's again, you are transported in the studio when he's behind the kit. It's so cool.
I really noticed, of course, the separation with the competing guitar solos. Between John, Paul, and George at the ending where they trade off solos. Once again, I feel the nuances and the notes even more so than in the stereo, hearing it in 5.1. And once again, the song already rocked, but it feels more rock.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it opens with those two guitar goes.
It's so cool.
Much more rock.
Yeah, very cool.
In my opinion. And
now we're really going to get to the end now, right? Or you have something else on
one other thing. On the end, the final ending of it, da na 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 na, you make da da, and that big orchestral ending, that was even more amazing in 5.1, in my opinion. And in fact, it was so beautiful. I thought, oh my gosh, when I die, that's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
I want to hear this ending as I leave the mortal coil. And that's how I felt when I heard that 5.1.
Yeah.
So
just whatever, spectacular.
Whatever that's worth.
So glorious. And I didn't write anything really about Her Majesty. I didn't write anything. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, of course, it's always been. Her Majesty has always been just kind of a funny little crescendo to the whole album. I mean, the end is like the ending that it is. You can look at it as the ending of the album.
Yep.
And then there's this long pause, and then you have this little hidden bonus track that's really not hidden because it's there on the credits, but it feels like the way we on CDs when we had those hidden tracks that weren't listed on the album credits, so they were hidden, and that's what it feels like. So that was one little area where I guess the Beatles also did something innovative. I don't know of any other band at that time that did something like that.
I mean,
Beatles, we had a long gap of silence and then a song finally, a short little song.
Ahead of the curve. It's just great. But the overall listening to the 5.1 and just to the whole 50th anniversary deluxe edition, as if I didn't already have so much of an appreciation for this album, but it reintroduces re-energizes kind of the relationship you have with the album and the songs and everything. And I'm so happy that the Beatles and Giles Martin got together and put this out.
I personally felt that the stereo mix accomplished that for me. But this 5.1 pushes it just a little bit further. Makes it more of once again, as you said, immersive experience. From the stereo. I thought the stereo was very immersive too.
I agree.
This one does too. But you've spent more time with the Blu-ray and I've spent more time with the stereo.
That's right.
So,
But it's so much. I think this is the fan. Like many of us, I've had all these various bootlegs over the years and this and that. But boy, I'll tell you, this series they've done with Sgt. Pepper's and then the White Album and then this have been great. And I think you've brought it up in one of your episodes. But boy, it'd sure be nice to give Revolver and Rubber Soul a similar kind of expose there too. I mean, I'll welcome that and be willing to shell out my hard-earned cash to kind of purchase that one when it comes out.
Yeah, and in all the comment responses, those are the two albums that get brought up the most that fans want to see next is Revolver and Rubber Soul.
Yeah.
So
I know
I
many
have a feeling
fans-
that we'll be getting those.
Yeah, many fans, list those. Revolver definitely gets on many Beatles fans' top of their list, even over the other ones we've been talking about. But I mean, obviously, all these albums are so important and beloved by Beatles fans.
So that's our reaction to the Blu-ray 5.1. Unfortunately, neither of us has a Dolby Atmos system. That's the new thing. Neither of us have it.
Yeah.
I might try to upgrade to that at some point in the future. But if anybody has heard the Dolby Atmos, let us know what you thought.
Yeah, please do.
Give us your opinion, or make a video, please, so that we can watch your video and get your reaction on it. But if not, please leave a comment. And let us know what you think. Did you listen to the 5.1? What were your thoughts? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Tell us the good, tell us the bad, whatever you think about it. Just be respectful. Remember, everybody's opinion is subjective. We all hear things differently. And no one's opinion is less valid than anyone else's.
That's right.
Your opinion is as valid as ours and vice versa. So let us know what you thought. And this was fun.
It was a lot of fun.
And, we got to do more 5.1s together again.
We do.
And
We
talk
do.
about them.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
See you later, everybody.
Bye-bye.